Imagine this. You're sitting across from her in a dimly lit cafe, the kind where the air smells of roasted coffee and the murmur of conversations hums softly in the background. And you're pouring your heart out, trying to be the man you think she wants. You've spent weeks molding yourself to fit her ideal, softening your edges, sharing your deepest fears, always agreeing, always available, hoping she'll see you as the one she's been dreaming of. You're giving her everything, showing her how much you care, how much you're willing to be what she needs, believing this will make her fall for you. But as you speak, you notice her eyes glaze over, her smile falter, her attention drift to the window, as if she's looking for something or someone else. You feel it, a quiet betrayal that stings sharper than words. She's not seeing you, not really. She's seeing someone you've never been, someone she's invented in her mind, and no matter how hard you try, you can't seem to fit that role anymore. Why does it feel like the more you give, the less she sees you? Why does it seem like the harder you try to be her dream, the more you become her disappointment? Why does the man who isn't trying, who isn't bending, seem to hold her gaze in a way you never could? This is the paradox that haunts you. You've been taught that love and attraction are won by being what she wants, by fitting into her vision of the perfect man, by giving until there's nothing left of you to give. Society tells you to be the provider, the pleaser, the one who sacrifices himself to be chosen, to be loved, to be enough. But what if that's the very thing that makes you invisible? What if the woman you're trying to win isn't falling for you, but for a fantasy, a projection of her inner masculine, a script you were never meant to play? What if true attraction, true respect, doesn't come from being her ideal, but from being your own, whole, authentic, and unapologetically yourself, even if it means standing alone? You've felt it, haven't you? The exhaustion of playing a role, of shaping yourself to fit her expectations, only to watch her pull away when you can't keep up the act. The way you've silenced your own truth, softened your boundaries, become someone you barely recognize, all to keep her close, only to feel her slip further away, her interest fading as you become more predictable, more controllable, more disposable. The way you've chased her validation, thinking it would make you a man, only to find yourself hollow, betrayed not by her, but by the version of yourself you've abandoned to be loved. Why does this keep happening? Why does being the perfect man so often leave you unchosen, unseen, while the man who stands firm, who doesn't bend, becomes the one she can't forget? Carl Jung, the visionary psychologist who plumbed the depths of the human psyche, understood this struggle through the lens of projection and individuation. He saw how women project their inner masculine, the animus, onto men, seeing them not as they are, but as a fantasy they've created, and how men, in turn, betray themselves to fit this illusion, becoming actors in a drama they didn't write. In a world where men are trapped by these projections, Jung's wisdom offers a different path, a brutal, transformative journey of individuation, of confronting your own unconscious, of choosing yourself to become whole, authentic, and free. But why are we so drawn to this trap of self-betrayal, of losing ourselves in her fantasy at the cost of our own truth? What drives us to trade our authenticity for her approval, and what does it cost us in the end? Let's dive deeper into the hidden forces at play and uncover the truth behind why you've been fading in her eyes, and how to become the man she can't help but truly see. You felt the sting of her indifference in that cafe, the sinking realization that your endless effort to fit her ideal, your softened edges, your constant availability, your desperate need to be her dream, left you invisible, unseen, while the man who stood firm, who didn't bend, became the one she couldn't look away from. You've been conditioned to believe that love is won by becoming what she wants, by molding yourself to her fantasy, by giving up your truth to be chosen. But the hidden problem isn't your effort. It's the belief that your worth, your manhood, your very existence depends on her seeing you, on her validating you with her gaze, her affection, her fantasy of who you should be. Let's uncover why you've been trapped in this cycle of self-betrayal and what Carl Jung understood about the forces that keep you from becoming the man you were meant to be. Your psychology is wired for connection, but it's also your greatest vulnerability. Your brain craves belonging. It's a survival instinct. When you mold yourself to fit her vision, when you silence your truth, agree to everything, or share your fears too soon, your reward system lights up with dopamine, urging you to chase that fleeting high of being chosen, of being seen as enough. But this wiring sets a trap. The fear of rejection activates your amygdala, driving you to overcompensate, to become what you think she wants, to play the role of her fantasy man at the cost of your own authenticity. Cognitive biases amplify this. The confirmation bias makes you believe that if you give more, if you fit her script perfectly, she'll love you back. But this blinds you to her deeper instincts. Neuroscience shows that this constant performance, those moments of self-betrayal, spikes cortisol, keeping you in a state of stress, eroding your confidence, and making you less desirable. Why does trying harder make you feel less seen? Because your brain is handing her the power to define you, turning you into an actor in her unconscious drama, someone she can replace when the script no longer fits. Philosophically, this trap echoes Nietzsche's critique of the herd mentality. He argued that society conditions men to conform, to seek approval through self-sacrifice, to be the good man who molds himself to others' expectations. But this sacrifices their individuality. You've been taught that a man's worth lies in being chosen, by her, by society, by the roles you play. But Nietzsche would call this a betrayal of the self, a surrender to the herd's demands, rather than a creation of your own truth. In the Red Book, Jung described the animus as a woman's inner masculine archetype, a force that when unintegrated becomes a tyrant, projecting fantasies onto men that they feel compelled to fulfill. When you conform to this projection, when you become the man she imagines rather than the man you are, you're playing into her unconscious drama, not building a real connection, a drama that ends when you can no longer sustain the role, leaving you betrayed not by her, but by your own self-abandonment. Society doubles down on this conditioning. In a world obsessed with external validation, think of the cultural praise for the nice guy, the pressure to be her savior, the narrative that a man's value lies in how much he can give. You're taught that love is a transaction, that you must perform, please, and sacrifice to be chosen. Aldous Huxley warned in Brave New World of a society that keeps you chasing approval to avoid facing your own depths. You see it in modern relationships. The man who agrees to everything, who never sets boundaries, who becomes her everything, thinking it'll make her stay. But this isn't love. It's enslavement, a dynamic where you trade your authenticity for her fleeting affection, leaving you open to being replaced when you can no longer play the part. Jung would add a deeper layer. Your self-betrayal stems from a disconnection from your shadow, the repressed parts of your psyche, the fears, insecurities, and truths you've buried to be loved. When you ignore this shadow, you let her animus projection define you, and her instincts sense it. She pulls away, not because you're not enough, but because you've given up the very thing that makes you real, your authentic self. But what happens when you keep playing this role, keep betraying yourself, keep living in her fantasy? What happens when you ignore the individuation Jung knew could set you free? The consequences are more devastating than you might think, and they're already shaping your life in ways you can't ignore. Let's uncover those costs and see why you can't afford to stay in this trap any longer. You've been trapped in the cycle of self-betrayal, molding yourself to fit her fantasy in that cafe, believing that by softening your edges, silencing your truth, and becoming the man she imagines, you'd win her love, her gaze, her validation. You've seen how your psychology, societal conditioning, and philosophical illusions have driven you to play this role, to conform to her unconscious projection at the cost of your own authenticity. But the unseen consequences of this betrayal are silently unraveling your life, your relationships, and your very sense of self, leaving you further from being truly seen than you realize. Let's uncover the hidden costs of this mistake, the toll it's taking on your reality, and why you can't afford to keep living as an actor in her psychological drama. First, consider your relationships. When you betray yourself, always agreeing, never setting boundaries, shaping yourself to fit her fantasy, you think you're showing love, proving your worth, making yourself the man she'll choose. But you're not. You're becoming a mask, a character in her unconscious script. And in doing so, you kill the mystery, the risk, the authenticity that sparks true attraction. She might stay for a while, drawn by the role you play, but over time, your predictability makes you invisible. Someone she can control rather than desire. You felt it, haven't you? The way her interest fades the more you conform, the way she pulls back when you're always there, the way you're left clinging to a connection that slips away with every move you make to sustain the act. Social psychology calls this the reactance effect. When you give up your autonomy to fit her fantasy, she loses her longing. Over time, this erodes your ability to form meaningful relationships, leaving you trapped in a cycle of fleeting roles, feeling more disposable with every attempt to be chosen. The damage strikes deeper. It hits your core identity. Every time you betray yourself, every time you trade your truth for her approval, you chip away at your self-worth. You start to doubt your value, your authenticity, your ability to be enough without playing a part, without her gaze to define you. Cognitive biases like the self-blame bias make you internalize her withdrawal. You think you're not enough, that you need to be more, give more, perform more. But this only deepens the wound. Neurologically, this constant role-playing keeps your brain in a state of stress, flooding your system with cortisol, impairing your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for clarity and self-awareness. You become anxious, hollow, unable to stand firm in your own truth. Why does her rejection hurt so much after you've given in? Because it's not just her betrayal. It's the death of the self you've abandoned, a self you've buried to be loved, leaving you nothing but the echo of her fading fantasy. On a broader scale, this pattern shapes the world around you. When you live as an actor in her drama, always conforming, always seeking her validation, you become a pawn in a society where the feminine is drawn to mystery, to the man who cannot be fully defined or controlled. You're competing with countless others, all playing roles, all begging to be chosen, and your inauthenticity makes you forgettable, a man who fades into the background, while the one who stands in his own truth becomes undeniable. In modern relationships, this perpetuates a cycle of disposability. Men who betray themselves are taken for granted, replaced when they can no longer fit the script, while those who remain authentic, who integrate their shadow, stand out. The bystander effect in attraction dynamics plays a role here. When everyone conforms, no one inspires longing, allowing women to be drawn to the man who seems untouchable. Your self-betrayal doesn't just hurt you. It fuels a world where true connection is reserved for those who know the power of being real. The stakes are higher than you think. Every moment you spend playing this role, abandoning your truth, letting her projection define you, is a moment you're not becoming the man who naturally commands her respect, her longing, her true gaze. You feel it, don't you? The quiet ache of being unseen, the fear that you're meant to be more but can't break free from this cycle of performance and rejection. If you keep going like this, what will you lose next? Your authenticity, your relationships, your very sense of self. There's a way out, a rebellion against this trap, a path to embody the wholeness Jung knew could set you free. Let's take that step and discover how to become the man she can't help but see, the man who chooses himself. You've seen the devastating toll of self-betrayal, how it's left you unseen, eroded your self-worth, and trapped you in a cycle of rejection, all while pushing her further away instead of sparking the true connection you crave. You've been playing a role in her unconscious drama, molding yourself to fit her fantasy in that cafe, believing that by silencing your truth, softening your edges, and becoming her ideal, she'd see you, choose you, love you. But here's the rebellion Carl Jung's wisdom urges you to embrace. Stop being her fantasy and start being your reality. The authentic man, the one who undertakes the brutal journey of individuation, who confronts his unconscious and chooses himself, isn't the one who fits her script. He's the one who writes his own, becoming so whole, so unshakably real, that his very existence becomes a mirror she can't ignore. This radical shift will empower you to break free from her projections, to become a man who commands true respect and connection, leaving her unable to look away. First, confront your shadow in silence. You've been avoiding your inner depths, fleeing the parts of yourself you've buried, your fears, your insecurities, your raw, unfiltered truth, because facing them feels terrifying, lonelier than any rejection. But Jung taught that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And your avoidance keeps you enslaved to her projections. Sit with yourself in stillness, alone, without distractions, in your room, with nothing but the sound of your breath. Ask the brutal question, what have I abandoned in myself to be loved? Let the illusions crack. Feel the pain of your self-betrayal, the weakness you've hidden, the truth you've silenced. Psychologically, this taps into your subconscious, allowing you to integrate your shadow, the repressed parts of your psyche, which lowers stress and builds emotional resilience. Practice this today. Spend 10 minutes in silence, facing the parts of yourself you've avoided, and feel the power of beginning to reclaim your whole self. Next, choose solitude over inauthenticity. You've been clinging to her gaze, staying in relationships where you play a role, fearing the emptiness of being alone more than the pain of being fake. But Jung knew that the fear of solitude is the fear of the self, and true freedom comes from standing without applause. Walk away from connections that demand your self-betrayal, whether it's a relationship where you're always performing, or a dynamic where you're her savior at the cost of your truth. In life, don't stay where your authenticity is compromised. Choose the terrifying loneliness of your own company over the comfort of her fantasy. This isn't about isolation, it's about sovereignty, showing that you'd rather stand alone than live as a shadow of yourself. Historically, men like Henry David Thoreau, who sought solitude to find truth, embodied this. His authenticity made him a beacon, a man others couldn't ignore because he lived for himself, not their scripts. You can do the same, turning every departure into a declaration of your worth, every moment alone into a step toward your wholeness. Finally, become the author of your own reality. You've been letting her animus projection define you, playing the fool in her myth because facing your own emptiness felt too daunting. But Jung's core truth rings clear. You don't become a man by being chosen. You become a man by choosing yourself. Stop blaming her for not seeing you. Stop waiting for her to choose you, and start choosing yourself, your truth, your values, your path. In a relationship, set boundaries that honor your authenticity, even if it risks her leaving. In life, align your actions with your inner voice, not her expectations. Neurologically, this self-alignment reduces cognitive dissonance, calming your mind and grounding your presence, making you a man who radiates unshakable certainty. Try this now. Identify one way you've conformed to her fantasy, and take a single action, however small, to honor your truth instead, feeling the strength of authoring your own story. This rebellion defies everything you've been taught. Society will push you to perform, to conform, to seek her approval. But every time you choose silence over avoidance, solitude over inauthenticity, self over her script, you grow strong. You start to feel it. Her gaze shifts, her respect deepens, and your presence becomes undeniable. Jung's path of individuation isn't about rejection. It's about becoming the man who's already whole, who attracts truth because he embodies it. As we move to the final realization, you'll see how this rebellion isn't just a way to break free. It's a way to redefine connection, to become the man she truly sees. Are you ready to step fully into that authenticity? You've rebelled against the trap of self-betrayal, embracing the brutal journey of individuation, confronting your shadow in silence, choosing solitude over inauthenticity, and authoring your own reality, shifting the dynamic so her gaze lingers, her respect deepens, and your presence becomes a mirror she can't ignore. You've stopped playing the role in her unconscious drama, refusing to mold yourself to her fantasy as you did in that cafe, choosing instead to stand firm in your own truth, to become whole, authentic, and free. But here's the ultimate truth Carl Jung's psychology reveals. You were never meant to be chosen by her. You were meant to choose yourself. The authentic man, the one who emerges from individuation, isn't the one who wins her love, but the one who wins his own, becoming so whole, so unshakably rooted in his own reality, that his very existence becomes a magnetic force she can't resist. Not because he needed her, but because he didn't. This revelation redefines everything, turning your longing into power, your solitude into strength, and your life into a testament to the man you were always meant to be. Jung understood that the gods have become diseases, and that chasing her validation is a spiritual sickness, a refusal to carry your own soul, projecting your hope, meaning, and purpose onto her gaze, her fantasy, her choice. You've been seeking wholeness in her, believing she could complete you, that her love would make you a man. But the ultimate truth flips this on its head. The man who truly attracts her, who earns her respect, isn't the one who fits her animus projection. He's the one who's already whole, who doesn't need her to breathe because he's faced his own shadow, integrated his unconscious, and chosen himself fully. Solitude, self-confrontation, authenticity, these aren't just tools to break free. They're the essence of a man who's become his own author, who radiates a presence so grounded, so real, that her instincts can't help but respond. When you choose yourself, when you stand without her applause, you transcend the drama of projection. You become the mirror she longs to see herself in. Not because you chased her, but because you chased your own truth. Philosophically, this truth aligns with Jung's vision of individuation as the path to wholeness, a journey that requires you to die before you die, letting the false versions of yourself burn so something real can emerge. The pain of her rejection, the exhaustion of playing her role, the anxiety of not being enough, it all stems from tying your worth to her choice, from living as a character in her story rather than the author of your own. But when you individuate, when you integrate your shadow and stand alone, you become untouchable, unmanipulable, a man who sees through the games and masks of projection. Nietzsche would add that this is the path of the Übermensch, the overman who creates his own values, who transcends societal norms, who doesn't need external validation to define his existence. You don't need her to love you. You are love, a force she can't ignore because you've become the embodiment of your own truth. Psychologically, this revelation is transformative. Seeking her validation keeps you in a cycle of stress, flooding your brain with cortisol, eroding your self-esteem with every rejection. But when you choose yourself, when you stand in your own truth, you break that cycle. You lower stress, allowing your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for clarity and emotional resilience, to take over. You feel calmer, more grounded, more alive. Studies show that men who cultivate self-awareness and authenticity report higher emotional stability and deeper relationships. Because they're no longer at the mercy of her projections, they're at the helm of their own reality. You might find yourself forming connections that matter, not because you need them, but because you choose them. And that choice makes all the difference. This changes how you live. You walk through the world differently now, with a quiet sovereignty, a presence that unsettles and attracts in equal measure. You're not the man you were, the one who begged, who performed, who lived for her gaze. You're a man who knows himself, who commands respect through his authenticity, his wholeness, his unshakable truth. Think of someone like Ralph Waldo Emerson, whose self-reliance made him a beacon, a man others couldn't ignore, because he lived for his own truth, not their approval. You can do the same, turning every interaction into a reflection of your reality, every silence into a moment of your power. Picture this. You're back in that cafe, but now she's the one leaning in, her eyes locked on you, drawn to the man who doesn't need her to shine, because you already do. This is Jung's ultimate truth. True connection comes from within, and when you embody it, she sees you. Not because you sought her, but because you became the man she can't help but see. Step into that authenticity. Live it, and let it redefine everything. You've walked through the shadows of self-betrayal, felt the weight of playing a role in her fantasy in that cafe, and uncovered the unseen costs that left you invisible, disposable, and disconnected from your own truth. You've learned Jung's ultimate truth. True connection comes from choosing yourself, from undertaking the brutal journey of individuation, confronting your shadow, and standing in your own reality, becoming so whole that your authenticity becomes a mirror she can't ignore. You're no longer the man who seeks her validation to feel worthy. You're the man who radiates worth, a man whose presence alone commands her respect, her longing, her true gaze. Start today. Take one small step toward individuation. Sit in silence for 10 minutes. Face the truth you've avoided, and feel the power of choosing yourself over her fantasy. Practice this in every moment and feel the transformation. Her eyes linger, her respect deepens, and your authenticity becomes magnetic. You've learned to be the man she truly sees, not by fitting her script, but by writing your own. How does it feel to stand in your own truth, to be the man who doesn't need her to shine? Share in the comments, what's one truth you'll face today, and how did it shift the dynamic? Your story could inspire another man to break free from projection. If this resonated with you, hit the like button. It lets us know you want more content like this. Subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next dive into psychology and self-mastery. Share this with a man who's been playing a role, seeking validation. He might need this wisdom to become the man he was meant to be. The world will keep pushing you to perform, to conform, to seek her gaze. But now you know the truth. You don't need her to be whole. You are the mirror, the fire, the man who radiates authenticity in every step. Step into that freedom, live it, and build a life where her longing follows, not because you demanded it, but because you became the man she can't help but see. You're not just being chosen, you're choosing yourself, and the world will never feel the same again.